Welcome everybody. So this is the first in a series of professional developments that we're going to do during our late starts. For those of you at home, our school generally has alternating late starts professional developments, and so every other week the teachers get anywhere between an hour to 30 minutes of PLC time together. So that's the time that we will be utilizing for these professional developments. And here we go. So welcome guys. So this is our PLC. We are in a mixed group today. However, normally we might be in math or science groups. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over the data that we acquired from the survey that you took recently. And so let's begin with our norms. So we're going to begin with our norms. As you know, it's basically a code of conduct so that we can be productive, so that we can not necessarily step on each other's toes and have misunderstandings, so that we can be professional. So the first norm, and these are our norms that I came up with, which are essentially the standards. If you have something that you would like to add, please feel free to add to those as soon as we kind of go through the list. So the first one is assume positive intentions. So when we get feedback from our colleagues, we want to assume that they are being helpful or attempting to be helpful, not necessarily trying to hurt our feelings. Number two, take turns speaking. It helps keep the noise level down in the room, and also it helps us hear each other, because hearing and listening is a very important part of communication. So if we can hear what we're saying, we're not just trying to drown out everyone else with our opinions. We're taking turns, giving everybody equal time, equal share. Respect opinions. We may not all agree. We may learn something from each other and everybody's different viewpoints. Number four, it's okay to disagree. I've often heard let's agree to disagree, and that seems to work out okay sometimes. We will not always agree, but we can always find perhaps a amicable middle ground. Minimize the side talk. As a classroom teacher, I try to make sure that my students are paying attention to me, and so in this situation, it's maybe similar in that I want to make sure that you get the most out of this time that we have together, and that we're not necessarily wasting each other's time, and that you feel that your time is being valued. And minimizing the side talk will help us kind of make this more productive for everybody. If we're going too slow and you want to speed up the conversation, if it's too remedial, let me know. That's all part of us having our opinions and being able to communicate. And of course, we're here because we care, right? For the most part, every teacher becomes a teacher because they really do care about the students. Even though it may be trying at times, we're definitely here because we care. And finally, be efficient. I don't want to waste your time. I know your time is valuable. We have just a few minutes to get together and talk and discuss and prepare for next 2 weeks from now for our next session. Are there any other norms that we'd like to add? It's all covered? All right, let's begin. So, as a mixer, let's just briefly kind of get started into what it is that we're here to talk about. So we're here to talk about our English language learners here at the high school. So briefly, I want you to maybe turn to your neighbors so that you can discuss some of your successes with your ELL students and perhaps some of the challenges with your ELL students. So then after that, we'll get back together and we'll share out loud with the whole group what some of our successes are and what some of our challenges are. And you'll be sharing the challenges and the successes from the partners that you were talking with. So let's go ahead and begin. Turn to your neighbors and go ahead and discuss some of your successes and your challenges. We'll do 2 minutes for the successes first, and then I'll let you know when the 2 minutes are up. And then we'll do 2 minutes for the challenges. If you're on a roll and you're caught up, please let's try to switch over so that we can get through this quickly. I know you all have things to do and we want to be as efficient as possible. We begin. At this point, I would give the participants 2 minutes to discuss their successes, then make an announcement that the 2 minutes were up and that The second 2 minutes where discussing their challenges would begin, and then they would get together, and then I would ask them for their share outs of what their partners were doing. Okay, everybody, so we just spent 4 minutes all together going over our successes and our challenges. Is there anything that you heard your partners talking about that you'd like to share? Volunteer participant number 1.
Yes, we shared that one of our EL students that we had worked with, we kind of took the time to get to know them and know what they do outside of class, and that ended up being very helpful when trying to teach them academically.
Thank you. So at this point, I would share with the group that what we actually did was in itself an ELL strategy where we can get the students to talk to each other and to listen. Because the students who are English language learners need to practice speaking and practice listening and summarizing what they just heard their partners say. And so in this way, I'm embedding a little strategy within our mixer. Thank you. So it's that time again. We are going to discuss the results of the survey now. First off, the question was, what was the last time you participated in an ESL or ELL strategy professional development? In our district, it was a little bit mixed. We had a large group, 42%, showing that they had not had a professional development within the last 4 years. And while 7% said never, the other approximate half of the group, maybe 43%, would report that they had had a professional development within 3 months or sometime during this last school year. So in our group, we're going to have a mixed group of teachers who have had experience, recent experience, and those who have not had recent experience. So we're going to have perhaps a few experts in the group. So those of you who in the group who have had professional development within the last year and a half, you could just, or last year, raise your hand so we know who you are in the group. And then those of you who have not had a professional development in more than a year, raise your hands so we know who you are. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we are, as you can see, some of us are going to be more recent experts and some of us are going to be experts that maybe had not had a recent PD. One of the questions in the survey was, what do we need? One of the things from all these different responses of what we needed, the ones that were most frequent were identifying students who were currently English language learners. That was one of the things that was on there repeatedly. Identifying students who were previously English language learners. Help with differentiation and strategies. So it looks like we need to figure out who these students are that need our help. And 2, what strategy should we use? How should we differentiate? So those are the 2 things that we're going to be tackling in these next 4 weeks. For this week, week 1, we're going to identify who our English language learners are. We're going to be able to tell the difference between RFEP, which was be reclassified fluent English proficient students, and the non-reclassified English fluent English proficient students. And identify the benefits for students who do achieve reclassification, which is important. Who are they? So our English language learners, this is the data coming back from what you said. Is it easy to identify your English language learners? So as you can see, 5 was, yes, it's very easy. 1 was, no, it's very difficult to identify them. So we had 5, 4, 2, and 3. So the majority of the group is either kind of neutral or perhaps a little bit negative, where they do have a little bit of problem finding who the students are. The needs assessment survey that we did gives us an idea of basically what you need. So this is what we're going to look at first. So if you all open up your laptops and go into PowerSchool, we're going to go ahead and sign in, and together we're going to look at one of our classes and identify who our ELL students are. This should be fairly quick. So once we go into our Schoology, and you get your class list, pick one of your classes. You're going to see the breakdown for your class. But in this case, we're not going to pick on the attendance, we're going to pick on the backpack. So the little backpack symbol, we're going to click on the backpack, and then you're going to get this screen, and it may not say cumulative grade information. So in the drop-down menu on the far right, you're going to go ahead and pick cumulative grade information. On this screen, it'll show the English language arts status for your student. So here, this student is reclassified fluent English proficient. They scored an EL level of 7. So according to the testing, they are capable of having conversations and writing at a fairly proficient level for an English language learner. There are other classifications, however. There is also the English-only classification for students who were not designated as English learners. And then there is the IFPE, which is an intermediary category where they've scored well on their testing, but they haven't necessarily achieved the reclassification status. Now, for those students who are reclassified, how well do they do? So these are the results for what you believe is going on with your ELL students. So here we can see that the majority of the teachers, right here, 7 and 3, are either neutral or they understand, they believe, they've seen that their ELL students generally do a little bit, they struggle academically in the classroom. These are our SAT scores from our district, showing that we've got 3 categories here. We have all students. We have all students at the top for La Mirada, John Glenn, and Norwalk High Schools, and each of them show a pattern where all students score the highest, the category of all students. Looking just at the non-RFEP students, we get a drop. Their scores, a significant drop. And then the reclassified fluent English proficient students actually get quite an increase in their scores, scoring well above the average high school student. Looking at these patterns, we can see that there's a definite benefit to helping our English language learners to achieve reclassification status. Here is a link to a few strategies that are helpful also for our non-English language learners. So there might be some hesitance for some newer teachers to say, oh, I don't want to use an ELL strategy if my students aren't English language learners. However, there is data that suggests that the strategies are still good teaching practices and that they do benefit non-English language learners. So, for today's homework, we're pretty much done for today. What I would like for you to do before we meet next week is I would like you to perhaps engage with your English language learners and see where they're at. See how much they actually talk to their colleagues, see how much they're participating in class, see how they're doing in the gradebook. And then next week we will come back and go over some strategies to help your English language learners in the class. So over the next 3 weeks, when we come back, the first time that we meet, we'll be going over the Freyer model. Then 2 weeks later, think, pair, share. Then 2 weeks after that, reciprocal teaching. Right now, let's go ahead and take a moment to enter those dates into our calendars so that we can plan ahead and be prepared. So at this point in the PD, it would be over. The teachers would go back to their classrooms. And 2 weeks later, we would come back with information about how they observed, what they discovered in their classrooms, and then we would start with the first strategy, the Freyer model. Welcome back, everybody. So how was your week? How was your 2 weeks?
Good. Good. Good.
Excellent. So is there anything that you noticed about your English language learners these last 2 weeks? Yes?
I noticed that they're reluctant to speak. And the last time we met, you talked about how important it was that they speak to one another. We kind of know that in education, that those are the students who need the most of the ones that actually do the least.
Right. And so coming up with strategies that allow them to talk to each other, to repeat what they've heard, strategies that allow them to discover vocabulary words so that they can, so they're able to distinguish the proper use of the words, are all very productive strategies. So today we're going to talk about the Freyer model, and it is a graphic organizer. It is a graphic organizer that allows the students to understand one particular word in multiple ways, in multiple aspects. So let me pass these out. This is a little cheat sheet that has the category for each. And then we will have a blank one so that we can discuss and practice a little bit of how to fill out the sheets. So the Freyer model is simple and effective. It is a way to define vocabulary words for English language learners. The first quadrant shows the definition. Second quadrant, characteristics of the word that we are speaking about. Third quadrant, examples, and then the fourth quadrant, non-examples. So it provides an opportunity to provide contrast for the English language learner to make connections on multiple levels and then recall the proper meaning of the words. Here was the cheat sheet that I handed out to you, so there's a little quick reminder of what each quadrant is describing and what it's asking the students to fill in. Oops, that's a little bit of a preview for 2 weeks from now. So at this point in the PD, I would engage with the teachers, coming up with different words that we could practice doing the Freyer model with. Ideally, then the teachers would then take these Freyer model examples back to their classroom, try them out, and in 2 weeks' time we would come back together and discuss our results. Did it improve the scores on vocabulary tests? Did it stay the same? How did the kids react to this? How did the non-ELL students do with this new strategy as well? And that would have the same type of introduction of a strategy, practice with the teachers, practice in the classroom would happen for the other strategies, think, pair, share, and reciprocal teaching. Thank you very much.